The alley reeked of rotting coal and old blood. Hidden just far enough from the lamplit main street of Char Hollow that no enforcer would bother to wander in. Arthur Xavier waited, gloved fingers brushing the handle of his pistol in the dark. Coat collar turned high against the wet night air. Then, from the shadows, the Ironborn came. Ulf Ironborn stepped into view first, tall for 15, wrapped in a heavy leather coat with soot-stained shoulders and a coal-smudged scarf knotted tightly around his throat. His boots crunched against broken glass as he strode forward, flanked by 2 younger guards no taller than his ribs. Bokinia stood to his left, all bright eyes and sugar-sweet smile, as if she'd wandered off from a bakery and into a battlefield. She carried herself with the easy confidence of someone who had already decided who in the room was worth sparing. At her hip hung a dagger, glinting beneath her patchwork jacket. Beside her, Cuseo hovered quietly, his nervous eyes scanning the shadows. He held a knife too, though his trembling grip suggested he'd rather use it on a lock than a man. "Xavier," Ulf said, his voice low and steady. "You came alone. Brave or stupid?" Arthur gave a faint shrug. "Little of both. You have something I want. And you have something I'll want eventually." Ulf smiled, sharp and thin. "That's how this works." Bokinia stepped forward, hands folded behind her back, her smile never faltering. "We know what you're here for. The twins." She tilted her head like a curious bird. "They're safe. But nothing's ever free, Mr. Xavier. Even heroes have to pay." Arthur's jaw tensed. "I'm not a hero." "No," Ulf said. "But you're a cipher. And right now, that's worse. You've made enemies, Arthur. Big ones. Friends too, I hear. The crows are loud these days." Arthur didn't bite at the bait. "Where are they?" "Xavier," Ulf said, low and deliberate. "You brought it." "I did." Arthur knelt down slowly and unwrapped the satchel, revealing a palm-sized brass contraption shaped like a miniature biplane. Sleek, fragile, and humming faintly with energy. "It's a prototype. Lonnik designed it himself." Ulf crouched beside it, eyeing the machine with open admiration. So the stories were true. Lonnik Morrow, the toy maker. Bokinia leaned in, her smile deepening. "It's adorable, like a little metal bird. But I'm guessing it doesn't just flutter." Arthur's tone was flat. "Controlled flight within half a block. Wired for a small explosive charge. Not a lot of payload, but fast, quiet. If you get 20 of these, you can tear through a convoy without ever stepping out of cover." Ulf stood and nodded, expression sharpened now with interest. "I like it. Very much. That'll be the price." Arthur's brow creased. "You want all 20? 20 delivered," Ulf confirmed. "Built to spec. And one more thing, your guarantee that Lonnik himself made them. I want his craftsmanship. No half measures, no substitutions." Arthur exhaled slowly, jaw tense. "That's a heavy price. I expect you to say yes because otherwise you'll spend the rest of your days wondering if those boys are still breathing," Ulf replied. "I know you, Xavier. You can't live with that kind of doubt. And I won't lie, they're good kids. Deserve a better end than their father got." There was a pause thick as the city smog. Bokinia tilted her head, watching him. "So's a child's life. 2, actually. Cute little boys, twins. Wouldn't want anything bad to happen while you stall." Arthur's fists clenched at his sides, but he nodded. "Fine. You'll have your planes. But I want the location. Now." Ulf smiled, cold and pleased. "Deadland Woods. The twins are alive, in the care of Jackie Comer. Hidden well. And trust me, no one gets near his sanctum unless he allows it." Arthur gave a curt nod. "I'll go after this job is done. Make sure they're safe myself." As Arthur turned to leave, Ulf called after him. "One more thing. You're poking at Valeska, right? Looking for trouble?" Arthur didn't answer, but the stillness in his stance was confirmation enough. "Then watch for the smiling one," Ulf said, his voice a little lower now. "Don't trust his face. Don't trust his voice. He's not what he seems." Arthur turned, eyes narrowed. "What is he?" Bokinia's smile widened. Something that wears human skin like a party mask. And you know what they say, if he starts laughing, it's already too late. No more words passed. The Ironborn disappeared into the mist, Bokinia giving a graceful little curtsy, and Cuseo lingering for just a second to offer Arthur a look that might have been concern or pity. Later, at the cipher hideout, the hum of electrical equipment echoed in the underground bunker. Arthur relayed the news to Lonnik and Silas. "They're alive," Arthur said, "with Jackie Comer. Safe for now. But I had to pay for it." Lonnik raised an eyebrow. What did he ask for? Arthur set the empty satchel on the table.
Wani protutipa bumbes.
"Yours." Lonnik scoffed, running a hand through his hair. Of course he wants toys. Damn it. I should have let that nickname die years ago. Silas, seated nearby, said quietly, "If it gets us closer to the twins, it's worth it." Arthur nodded. "After this mission, I'm going to the Deadlands. I'm bringing them home." Lonnik stepped forward, his expression grim. "And what about this smiling one? You believe what Ulf said?" Arthur's jaw set. "Doesn't matter. If he's real, I'll find him, and I'll wipe the smile off his face." The fog rolled off the docks in heavy waves, swallowing the crooked lamp posts and casting a muffled pall over the tangle of market stalls and alleyways near Ink Lane. The lanterns flickered in the salt-choked air, giving the whole scene a spectral sheen. Arthur Xavier stood still among the shadows, the black scarf across his lower face concealing his features beneath a hooded oilskin. In this corner of Doskvol, he wasn't Arthur tonight. He was the Watchman, a name whispered among fences and black market informants, a collector of secrets and seller of even darker truths. His gloved hands toyed absently with a small brass token he kept in his pocket, more ritual than necessity, as he waited beneath a canvas stall sagging under the weight of damp burlap sacks. He wasn't alone long. Vero emerged from the mist like something conjured, tall and expressionless beneath a bird-like porcelain mask, hands gloved, posture almost puppet-like in its rigidity. His voice, when it came, was smooth but strange, like someone mimicking the melody of a human tone without quite nailing the rhythm. "Watchman," Vero said with a stiff half-bow. "Or is it Watcher? I forget which you prefer. You carry so many names." Arthur's voice came low and level. "I carry what I need. Let's not pretend this is a social call." A pause. "No," Vero said, head cocking just a bit. "Of course not. Secrets are better currency than smiles, I always say." Arthur stepped forward, slow and deliberate, his boots slapping in shallow puddles. "You worked with the royal family. I know your taste in chaos. But now you've been leaking information to the Circle of Flame. You gave them movement reports from the ciphers, prototypes, test locations." Vero chuckled softly, almost to himself. "Oh, but you make it sound so dirty, as if truth wasn't meant to move freely, like air or flame." Arthur's jaw tightened. "You sold them ghosts and maps that were never meant to be found." Vero turned away, almost lazily, running gloved fingers across the rusted metal siding of a fish stall. "I sold what I was told to, and what I was told to say, I said. My mouth is a rented room. I don't choose the tenants." There was something off about the way Vero moved, Arthur noted. Something just a little too fluid, too precise. It was like watching a stage actor repeat a well-rehearsed performance. But the costume didn't quite fit. "Who told you to feed intel to the Circle?" Arthur pressed. "You're not clever enough to orchestrate that alone." Vero turned, tilting his head slightly. "You've met him, or you haven't. It's hard to tell. Depends on the day. Some days he's fire. Some days, fog." Arthur's eyes narrowed behind his mask. "The smiling one?" "Ah," Vero whispered, as if savoring the words. "Yes, he borrows faces the way others borrow coats. Wears them for the night, then leaves them somewhere wet. But always smiling." Arthur's grip on the pistol under his coat tightened. "Jerome Valeska." "No," Vero said with sudden sharpness. "Jerome is a rumor, a breath caught in the throat of the city. The smiling one is everyone's mistake." The tension was a taut wire now. Arthur took a half-step closer. You think speaking in riddles will protect you? I think, Vero replied, slowly backing into the fog, that I've already said too much. Arthur caught the flash of movement a second too late. Vero's hand snapped toward his belt. Arthur drew, firing a clean shot into the side of the masked man's head point-blank. But Vero didn't drop. Instead, the body jerked like a marionette pulled by an angry string, staggered a step, then another, and ran. The mask hung slightly askew, revealing nothing but a glimpse of shifting flesh beneath. No blood.
No scream.
Arthur bolted after him. They crashed through crates and barrels, the docks a blur of shapes and shadows. Vero, if that was even his name, was fast. Faster than he should have been, given what had just happened. He moved like a shadow unhooked from a body. Arthur cursed, leaping over a stall and chasing the inhuman figure through a twisting alley. But the fog thickened. The footfalls vanished. The only thing left behind was a glint of metal lying in the puddled street. Arthur crouched and picked it up. A pocket watch, cracked, its face stuck on 11:59. Inside, pinned with a toothpick through the inner lining, was a scrap of parchment, rough and ink-stained. Scrawled on it in looping black ink were the words, "Next time, don't ask twice." Beneath it was a crude seal, a grin drawn in simple lines, stretched unnaturally wide. The Joker's grin. Arthur stood, pocketing the note, his breath ragged behind the mask. He replayed the shot again in his mind. The impact. The twist of Vero's head. No human survived that. He looked out over the dockside, watching the mist roll back in like a curtain. Something had just changed. And whoever the smiling one truly was, he wasn't just a madman anymore. He was something else. And he had plans. Arthur turned the phrase over in his mind. The smiling one. It wasn't a metaphor anymore. The more he thought about it. Vero's riddles, his too smooth words, the fact he survived a shot to the back of the skull. The clearer it became. Jerome Valeska. Of course it was him. Or someone acting in his image. If Vero was an agent of Jerome's, and more than that, possibly not even human, then the royal family was reawakening. There was only one place where Jerome's legend burned hotter than the fires he left behind. Barrow Cleft. The ruins of the old amusement park, long since closed after the infamous accident, had once been the royal family's stronghold. If there was still a hideout there, it would be crawling with ghosts, both literal and worse. Walking into Barrow Cleft now, knowing Jerome may be active there again, was suicide. And yet, Arthur found himself already halfway there. Barrow Cleft was dead quiet, the kind of silence that felt staged. Even the rats stayed away from the ruins of the amusement park, as though they knew it still whispered with secrets. Arthur Xavier stood before the crumbling husk of the old theater, its once grand marquee now a jagged grin of rusted letters. Paint peeled like dry skin from its walls, and beneath the shattered entranceway, shadows pooled like ink. He stepped inside. The rot hit him first. Mold, rust, and burnt paper, like someone had tried to erase something. He moved carefully through the cracked tiles and slumped rows of velvet seats. Backstage, where children's laughter had once echoed, he found the real stage, a royal family safehouse, still warm with the heat of recent use. Laid out across a crooked table were maps. Lots of them. Routes marked in red traced the movement of cipher shipments across the city. Another map, even larger, was pinned with dark green tacks, each one hammered into a site of interest for the Circle of Flame. Factories, safehouses, orphanages. It was a damn blueprint for war. Schematics for explosive charges were scrawled in a chaotic hand, the margins smeared with fingerprints and what looked like mustard. And beside it all, pooled into the creases of the tablecloth, a melted wax mask, its features unrecognizable save for the twisted smile burned into it. Arthur's breath caught. This was more than a hideout. It was a command center, and the orders came from Jerome. A noise behind him, too light for a step, too deliberate for wind. He turned just in time to catch the first attacker. Two men emerged from the shadows, lurching like broken marionettes, eyes wide and glassy. Their mouths moved in unison. "It's late. It's too late," they chanted, said the White Rabbit. One lunged without warning. Arthur twisted to the side, letting the man's own momentum carry him into a stack of crates that exploded in a spray of splinters. The second came at him with a jagged pipe, swinging wild and fast. Arthur ducked low, swept the attacker's legs out from under him, and sent him sprawling. "It's too late, too late," they kept saying, scrambling to their feet, unfazed by blood or pain. "Shit," Arthur muttered, realizing they weren't fighting to win, they were fighting to stall. He pivoted, grabbing one man by the collar and spinning him into the path of the other. They collided, fell into a heap, and Arthur drove his boot into one side to keep him down. He'd barely caught his breath before the smell hit him. Sweet, spicy, tangy, like a butcher shop exploded next to a deli counter. "Ah, so the watchman likes to play rough," came a voice from above. Arthur turned, gun raised. Perched on a beam above the stage was a man dressed in patched armor made from old condiment barrels. Tubes and vials ran across his back, sloshing with violently colored liquids. His belt clanked with nozzles, squeeze bottles, and metal tanks. And on his head, a cracked glass helmet shaped like a ketchup bottle. Mitchell Mayo, the condiment king. "I've heard of you," Arthur growled. "Thought you rotted in Ironhook." Mayo laughed, and the sound was unpleasantly wet. "Oh, I did, but only the boring part of me. The tasty part escaped, with a little help from a friend who loves a good punchline." He pulled a lever on his belt. A jet of green sludge blasted from his gauntlet. Arthur rolled behind a column as the acid sizzled into the floor, eating through the wood like it was sugar paper. "You really should try my new blend," Mayo called out, cocking his head. "Ghost pepper relish with just a hint of rat poison. Pairs well with betrayal." Arthur ducked out from cover, firing twice. One shot missed. The second pinged off a metal plate on Mayo's chest. "Oof, spicy?" Mayo grinned, flipping forward off the beam and landing with a squelch. Arthur drew a small firebomb from his coat, lighting the fuse with a flick of his thumb. "I've had enough of your mouth." "So has everyone," Mayo smirked. "But they keep coming back for seconds." He hurled a jar of something thick and yellow. Arthur smashed it midair, dousing the floor in some kind of blinding gas. The firebomb landed wide. The two circled each other in the haze. Mayo launching bursts of boiling brine and pepper-infused glue, Arthur countering with calculated strikes, trying to land a clean shot. But the condiment king was fast. Not graceful, never that, but unpredictable, chaotic, and impossible to pin down. He chattered nonsense as he moved, quoting recipes and shouting puns. "You know what you lack, Xavier?" he shouted. "Flavor. All you ciphers and spies always so serious. What you need is a little zest." Arthur finally managed to land a punch, sending Mayo sprawling into the map table. It flipped, sending the documents scattering across the stage. "Yield," Arthur demanded, pressing his gun to the man's temple. But Mayo just grinned, his helmet cracked, his face bleeding but eyes wild with glee. "Go ahead," he rasped. "But the joke's still on you." Then he pressed a button on his belt. Arthur barely dove away as a second explosion tore through the backstage wall. When the dust settled, Mayo was gone, vanished through the smoke like a ghost with a condiment fetish. Arthur groaned, picking himself up, bruised and bleeding. He staggered to the scattered papers and retrieved one of the surviving blueprints. Then his eyes caught something beneath the table, a small, unopened envelope marked with a crude Joker's grin. He opened it. Inside was a list of dates and locations. All matched known circle of flame operations that had failed spectacularly. Intercepted, betrayed, or slaughtered. Arthur's blood ran cold. Jerome had been playing both sides, feeding intel to the circle, then sabotaging them. He hadn't just helped orchestrate the ambush on the Ironborn. He'd used it to cover the real goal, freeing prisoners from Ironhook, including Mitchell Mayo, and the city hadn't even noticed. They were too busy fighting the fire to see who struck the match. Arthur stared at the broken wax mask still stuck to the floor. The smiling one wasn't just real. He was winning, and Arthur was now on his list. The storm outside was thick with soot and salt. Arthur stepped into the tech emporium, brushing rain and grime from his coat, his boots echoing against the copper-plated floors. The humming of generators and the hiss of pressurized steam made the walls feel alive. Nick Morrow stood over a half-assembled glider, goggles perched on his brow, sleeves rolled past his elbows, fingers stained with ink and oil. Silas Thorne sat nearby, cradling a mug of bitter tea in hands that still trembled faintly from memory. Arthur didn't waste time. "Jerome's not just alive," he began. "He's moving, pulling strings from the dark. Your secrets are secrets, they're not leaking from inside the ciphers. He's using shapeshifters, imposters. I saw one, took a bullet to the skull and walked away like it was nothing." Nick exhaled through his nose, wiping his hands with a cloth. "Clayface." Arthur paused. "You know him?" "By reputation," Nick said darkly. "If Jerome's using him again, then yes, this goes deeper than we thought." Silas leaned forward, eyes searching Arthur's face. "Are you saying Jerome's working with the Circle of Flame?" "I don't think he's working with them," Arthur replied. "I think he's playing them, feeding them intel, setting ambushes just to stoke the fire. The attack on the Ironborn base, I think it was cover. He needed something big enough to pull everyone's attention while he broke someone out of Ironhook. Someone dangerous." Nick didn't look up, but the tightening of his jaw said enough. "He's pulling strings," Arthur continued, "feeding intel to the Circle of Flame. Not through spies, through something else, shapeshifters. I saw one, took a bullet to the skull and kept walking. The bastard slipped out with half my gear and left me a note pinned with a toothpick." Silas finally spoke, voice low. "You think Jerome's been leaking our operations?" "I think he's been seeding chaos," Arthur replied, "playing the circle like a fiddle. He's the one feeding them our movements, the prototypes, maybe even tipping them off about our alliances. And now he's got some monster in his corner, someone who can wear faces like masks." Arthur stepped further into the room, shaking off the weight of the evening. "Whatever Jerome's building, it's not subtle. The royal family never was. I'm heading into the Deadlands. Jackie Comer has the Blackwood twins, and I'm going to bring them back. But I need to know that we're not walking into a war blind." Silence followed his words for a moment. Then Nick moved to the central table and pulled out a weathered folder, sliding it across to Arthur. "Before you go running off into cursed woods," he said dryly, "you should know something." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "A letter," Nick replied. "Invitation, actually. Balloon race. Another one. Same sponsors, same twisted festivities." Silas let out a surprised laugh. "Already? Feels like it's only been a year since the last one." "It has," Nick said almost wistfully. "Time's strange like that. Always moves faster in Doskvol." Arthur frowned. "Is this really the time for games? We have enemies circling on all sides. The Circle of Flame. Jerome. Whatever the hell that creature was." Nick looked up, something dangerous flickering behind his tired eyes. "That's why we're going." "Distractions," he said, tapping the folder with one finger. "Are tools, when you're the one making them." Arthur stared at him. "You're planning something." Lannick's grin didn't reach his eyes. "Well, it's an opportunity. One we're going to use." Arthur didn't press the point. He saw the glint in Lannick's eye, calculation, precision, and something far more dangerous. Nick offered only a crooked smile. "Let's just say, the sky's about to get a little warmer." Arthur turned away, lips pressed tight. "Fine. But first I'm getting the boys. I owe that to Adrian. I'll bring the twins back. Then we'll talk about opportunities." Silas nodded slowly. "I will go with you." The rain outside intensified, streaking the Emporium's high windows with long trails of water and ash. Somewhere beyond Doskvol's skyline, a balloon was being inflated, a race being planned, and something terrible waited to burn. Arthur took one last look at the two men beside him, then turned toward the door.